You're listening to Cottontail's podcast, part of the Silicon Valley Black Project, which produced the documentary film A Place at the Table about the Black pioneers of Silicon Valley. A Place at the Table can be viewed for rent on Vimeo.com on demand /A Place at the Table STEM. Through Cottontail's podcast, the Silicon Valley Black Project will continue to recognize the contributions made by African Americans. We will be featuring African American professionals, technologists in the fields of engineering, administration, and entrepreneurial pursuits from the past and present. Rachael Wong is a marine scientist working in social media marketing at the Monterey Bay Aquarium in Monterey, California. She talks with us today about her life and her aspirations in the field of ecology and marine science. Rachael covers a range of subjects regarding science and personal growth. First of all, Rachael, describe Rachael Wong and her family.
So I was born in Fremont, California, and most people know Fremont as the end of the BART line. Big, sprawling suburb, very multi-ethnic. So I grew up in an area that was, over 50% Asian, and it was wonderful growing up with so many people with so many different names like Natish and Shafali and Ahmed. That was just normal for me. Growing up in Fremont, I felt definitely in the minority being mixed race, in particular being half Black and half Chinese. I remember from a very early age experiencing a microaggression out on the playground, 3.5 years old, running around with my dad, 6 foot tall Chinese guy, and this little girl coming up to us and saying, "Oh, who is he to you?" And that's my daddy. And I'm swinging on the monkey bars, and I remember her looking my dad in the eye and saying, "No, you're not. You're not her dad. You must be her uncle. You don't look anything like her." And I just remember my dad turning red and trying to stay really calm as he's having a conversation with like a 6-year-old. "I am her dad." And she just kept saying no over and over again. And I feel like that was what made my parents decide they had to be in the classroom. My dad made sure he was at every single field trip. My mom made sure she was always volunteering in the classroom whenever she could, because they wanted to make it very clear that Rachael is half Black, half Chinese, and her parents are here. And that was really wonderful of them, but it didn't necessarily protect me from all the horrors that come from elementary school, just being teased about my curly hair, because there aren't a whole ton of Black people in Fremont. And I remember being called fluffy and puffy and all of that. And in high school, that's actually when I started to, I think loving curls also came with like discovering my identity more and my passions. When I was younger, I wanted to be a ballerina. And my mom made sure to show Maria Tallchief to me, one of the first Native American ballerinas, I believe. So I had lots of different models that my mom would show to me. And I was into writing, and then I hit high school and I found a passion for biology. And as you can imagine, there's actually not a whole lot of diversity in the science field and not a whole lot of people to point to. But I was just good at it. I was so good at it. I took all the honors biology classes. I took the AP bio class, and I'm still very proud that I got a perfect score on the test. To this day, I'm like, I got a 5 on the AP bio test. But I was just so enamored with this field that studied life. And when I went to UC Davis, that's when I decided I was going to study. At first, it was biochemistry, because I thought I was going to be a doctor. In my freshman year of college, I was 18 years old. I got to job shadow a doctor. And I've never met such a tired person in my life. He was so exhausted. We went from room to room, to patient, and he couldn't talk to me afterwards about what they said because he'd already forgotten. I was like, "Oh, this thing that this patient said wasn't that interesting," or, "Oh, they commented on their family." I would try to chat about it, but I realized that for him, it had become very sterile. The work was just go in, listen to them, prescribe them, and move on. And they weren't really people anymore. And I looked at that and I said, I don't think I can do that. I want something more. I discovered ecology in my second year of college, and I switched majors. I switched from biochemistry to evolution, ecology, and biodiversity. I wanted to study life. I wanted to study bugs. I wanted to study, all the marine life I could. I just was so interested in studying the diversity of life. And I took a field trip down to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which I'd been to many times as kids, like my brother and I. My parents always took us to museums, always took us to aquariums and zoos. And I really liked the Monterey Bay Aquarium, but when I went there in my junior year of college, my eyes were just so open. And I said to myself, I'm going to work here one day. And I'm very fortunate that I actually do now. Been there for 7 years. So,
how did that come about? Was it an internship first, or did you apply for a position? How did that happen?
It was a long road to get there. I was applying to it from the moment that I graduated from college, and I was really fortunate in that right out of college I had a job, had an internship at the Bodega Marine Laboratory for UC Davis. So I did some research work, and then I decided I really wasn't well suited for research, but it was really fun to work with researchers. And then I moved back home after that internship concluded, and this is like September, so fall, right after I graduated. I was looking for a job, anything in marine biology. I decided, I love Sylvia Earle. She's an amazing deep sea researcher. I want to study the ocean too. I'm so in love with it. Somehow I had to do marine biology, and I found the Marine Science Institute in Redwood City, and they take kids out on this 90-foot research vessel, and they do mud trawls, and they get bat rays out of the bay, and they show it to kids, and they release the bat rays back. And I thought, okay, I hate public speaking. I shake and cry, and I can't do public speaking, but I'm going to do this educational role because it means I can do marine biology and at least share that passion with younger generations. And I took all of that shaking and fear, and I actually channeled it into energy and enthusiasm. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to fake it until I become it. And I did. So that role was so much fun. And I remember in the interview for that role, they say, typical interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And they hired me anyway, even though I was looking elsewhere already. But I learned so much about how to communicate with a wide variety of audiences from pre-kindergarten all the way up through college to do just marine science interpretation. And I went to a job interview for the Monterey Bay Aquarium after about 2 years at the Marine Science Institute. And they loved me, but they didn't have a role available at the moment. So I waited 4 months to hear back from them, and I was so bummed. And it was a seasonal position, so just forgot about it. And then they called me up, and they said, "Are you still interested?" And of course, I was just ready to drop everything, move from Fremont, move out of my parents' house, move down to Monterey. I was living in, I rented a room out of somebody's house, and I was just living at the aquarium. I was barely eating meals. I was biking all the time. I was just obsessed with being at this place and making myself invaluable so that they'd keep me. And they were only going to keep me through September, from June to September. And 7 years later, I'm still here. And I love it. So much fun.
What is your title now?
I'm a digital engagement associate. So I'm working on a lot of the social media and email marketing for the aquarium. So it's really interesting how my path of marine science has brought me here, because I still get to do a lot of science interpretation. We do a lot of live streams in which I get to co-host with the main social media team. I get to write up web stories sometimes, and then I get to work on the email copy. But it's really nice that I have a lot of the science and content background so that I can do all of these different roles. And I love it because I feel like now I'm doing interpretation of science to an even broader audience. And in this day and age, during the pandemic, it's really important to be able to communicate through the internet, because that's our only lifeline right now.
Right. Have you found that you are unique? Are you one of those unique people that knows how to use a computer versus someone who's been at the museum and has no clue how to put together, say, a Zoom meeting or whatever? Has that been a strength for you?
Definitely. It was more so in my previous role. Right now, I'm around a lot of very, very tech savvy people.
Okay.
But in my previous role, where I was basically a volunteer supervisor, I worked with a group of folks who were not as tech savvy. So I definitely was one of the tech people that they came to, especially when we started to do more of our volunteer trainings online. So that was definitely
Yeah.
a bonus that I had that skill set.
So because you shifted over into the media section, you're kind of like, but at least you have the skills to keep up, at least keep in the running with him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was so glad that I have grown up fairly tech savvy, and my dad being a computer engineer, because I'm learning to do things like coding, which I didn't do too much before. I grew up with a MySpace, and you get to do some light coding there growing up as a teenager. So I'm glad to have a little bit of that technical background just built in.
Yeah,
from being a millennial.
And you got someone you can go back and refer to. He knows the language. I mean, from the machine language on out, he knows how to set up a website, how to even, well, having been in cybersecurity, my goodness, he knows it all. So how lucky for you that you have a reference right in the family.
Very lucky.
Well, you've outlined your career path at the Monterey Aquarium. What do you see for yourself in the future?
Well, I'm hoping to be at the Monterey Bay Aquarium for a very long time. Mm-hmm. I love it so much. It's a really mission focused place, which is different. Having all these people working towards a common goal for marine conservation, it's a passion place. It draws a lot of people who have a lot of the same interests, who are working towards this common goal, and it creates a family. It really is a big family, and I hope to be there for a long time. My pie in the sky is stay there long enough to become the CMO. That would be awesome. If my path leads me elsewhere, I really do enjoy digital marketing. I think it's absolutely fascinating as I continue to learn about it. I love strategy and digital strategy in particular, and how to reach our audiences and get them excited about, in this case, marine conservation.
Mm-hmm. So if you were given an assignment to build a strategy around marine conservation using the digital platform, what would be your idea as opposed to what we're doing now?
Oh my goodness, I think we're doing such a great job right now, though. I think a lot of what we need to do right now is connect people through seeing the animals and kind of empathizing with them. If you see these animals and you start to see, like, they have homes, they have families, they eat to survive. If you can get people to connect with some universals, I think that's usually the best way to get people to want to, contribute, to support your program. I think that's huge, especially when we're talking about like sea otters. I think sea otters are super easy. People see them, they're cute, but they're not just cute. We can talk about how, the mothers, they take care of the pups, and almost to the detriment of the moms. I think all moms can relate to that. Super relatable. I'm eating everything and I'm dead. Oh my gosh. And then you could talk about, how they're a keystone species. And that means that without them, the coastal ecosystems would just completely fall apart. So then you start to get people to think about stewardship and how I'm a part of the story. So getting someone to connect first with the animal, and then to see how they are a part of the story, and ensuring that this animal is around for future generations, and to secure also the health of the ecosystem. That's huge. Yeah. So I'm always about strategy that kind of gets at people's hearts. When you get to someone's heart, then they start to open up their ears and listen. Especially, in this day and age, I feel like there's so many people who are at war with each other. They're not listening anymore. They're frustrated. They just hear something that is contrary to what they think, what they believe. I think if we stop for a moment and listen from our hearts, listen to what connects us first, I think then we're more willing to listen to the rest. Like, okay, even though we differ, I see that there are a lot of similarities and that we can work together. So that's always what I'm thinking for strategy. How can we start to listen and connect people from their hearts?
In that same vein, I read your article, and you introduced these two young women, two African American young women who are interested in sharks. And I'm a shark fan. I watch.
Good.
Not that I love sharks, but they're just interesting to me.
Fascinating.
They really are. So, but you know what the publicity or the understanding of sharks is, and that is that they're dangerous and they eat people and whatnot. So, if you had to build a strategy to introduce us and make us understand sharks, what would your strategy be? Is there a specific shark that you choose, or because it's a huge number? I mean, it's like there's no one shark. There's all these different types of sharks. So, what would your strategy be to give us an idea of how we should appreciate and champion sharks?
I always love to go from the leopard shark. The leopard shark is a local species. You find it in the San Francisco Bay, and you find them out in Monterey Bay. You find them in the ocean, and I would love to start with a strategy that kind of centers around just storytelling, noticing, and that's what I used to do when I worked out on the floor. Is I would walk with someone up to the kelp forest, and I'd point out the leopard shark because they're always looking at sharks. They're so cool. They're so fascinating. But I would say, where's the mouth on this shark? And, you observe for a while and you notice it's on the bottom. If you have a mouth on the bottom of your face, what do you think you're eating? I'd sit for a while and I'd say, well, things that live on the bottom. Absolutely. You can tell a lot about a shark just from where its mouth is positioned. If you got a mouth on the bottom, you're eating crabs and snails or flatfish, things that live on the bottom. Sharks have a bad rap. People think that they're man-eating machines, but there are so many different kinds of sharks out there. In fact, even bat rays, those flat, winged, beautiful bat rays, those are sharks too. So sharks get a bad rap, but they're so different. There's such a variety of them out there. They're covered in these tiny teeth called dermal denticles, and that's what keeps animals from settling on them and fouling like a barnacle on a whale. So it's amazing to think that these animals are known for their teeth, but they're also just covered in teeny tiny teeth. They're just absolutely fascinating. Their skeletons are made out of cartilage, like the tip of our nose or our ears, so they're incredibly flexible. And sharks come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Some are as small as my palm. Some can get to be as long as a school bus, like the whale shark. They eat everything from krill to sea lions, and humans really aren't on the menu because we don't live in the ocean. I would really focus a strategy that talks about the stories, why these are so fascinating, why they're so important, these top predators that keep the rest of the ocean in check. Because there are animals that get sick and die and can spread disease just like they would on land. And then you have your top predator, like your wolf, that would come along and eat the sick sheep. And that's what the shark is doing in the ocean. So that's how I would probably talk about sharks. They're just wild and wonderful. There's so many directions you could go.
Well, that was great. I learned a lot. Their body is covered with teeth. That's amazing. That is amazing. Those two young women, where are they located now that you talked about in your article, that you met in the article?
They're actually located at a couple of different organizations. I know that one was actually just graduated and taking a gap year, and the other one was working on her graduate research. But this is a group that comes from minorities in shark science. So there was actually, what was it? It was Black Birders Week that came about because the young man who was birding in Central Park, and then somebody called the cops on him. So that's what started Black Birders Week, to be like, Black people in nature, this is normal and should be encouraged, and Black people should be out and experiencing nature and not be afraid of being arrested. So Black Birders Week came together. A bunch of folks started talking about just like going out and birding and just being Black and out with your binoculars and enjoying it. And through that hashtag on Twitter, they developed minorities in shark science. It actually connected several scientists just from all around the country that are Black and study different things. And these ladies are shark scientists. One studies rays and the other one studies it's a typical squalid shark body, the long shark body. I got to write a piece on them because my two coworkers who work in social media interviewed them, and I got to just write a piece about what they talked about, which was a lot of fun because they talked about shark teeth on eyeballs, which is even beyond shark teeth on skin. I just thought that was cool.
Well, now, so from there, is there now a Black association of shark hunters or shark watchers or whatever?
Yeah, so the Minorities in Shark Science, they're actually a group of shark scientists that now exists. There's 4 women who founded it, and they're still going now, and you can follow their work. It's just amazing.
So once they get this work codified and registered, who are they going to share their work with? Who would want to see that?
I don't really know. I know their mission actually is just to uplift other Black people in science, and specifically in shark sciences, which has been very exclusively white and male. So they're hoping to be a resource, and that other people can reach out to them, and that they connect. And they're basically just making a network of Black people in shark sciences that can talk to each other and support one another, which I find this so fantastic. Through all of the civil unrest that's been happening, my big thing is I never got to see Black people in science, and specifically like Black women. There was Bill Nye the Science Guy, and there was Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus, and that's all I saw growing up. So I didn't know it was for me till much later. So when I saw the Black Birders Week and I saw the Minorities in Shark Science people getting together, I thought this is so important, not just for Black children growing up, but for all children to see how many different faces and voices are a part of this story. And it always makes me tear up because I think about my son coming up and how he's going to hopefully see so many different people and know that like he's a part of the story, that women are a part of the story, that people of color are part of the story, and that we are all together working on hopefully a better future. That is just so powerful to me.
How many people do you know in the field, though? And unfortunately, we know the person in the field. Are there many more of us people of color entering the field of aquatics and aquariums and that type of stuff?
I think there are. There are quite a few, and I think that's just been highlighted from the Black Birders Week and the Miss Elasmo. It's great to see. But still, you can count them on one hand. And, at my institution, there aren't a lot of people of color. They're not a lot. But I'm hoping that with the conversations that we're having, and my institution is very dedicated to diversity, to having open conversations, and diversity trainings actually is what we're embarking on in the next month. Mm-hmm. I think that this is really going to open people's eyes, and I think we're going to see an increase in diversity at many different scientific institutions, because I think people are awake now. Whether they want it to be or not, the conversation is happening, it's loud, it's out there, and it's past time for us to start making sure that we have more representation in all fields.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Is there any opportunity for you, for instance, to go to high schools or junior highs and do a small lecture to, first of all, just interest young people in the area of aquatics and the biotic, oceanography and that type of thing? Is there any need for that, or do they request that?
Not in my role necessarily. My role just being on the internet and playing video games about marine science and just being a face out there. I think that's where I am right now as being in marketing. But I don't feel like my supervisor would ever discourage me from doing something like that. If I had the opportunity, she would be fully behind me for that.
What about a TED Talk, Rachael?
Oh gosh, I don't think I'm good enough for a TED Talk.
Oh,
TED Talk is
yes.
so amazing. If I ever had the opportunity,
Have you ever
I would
watched
do
a
it.
TED Talk?
Oh, they're fascinating, and these people are so well spoken and so exciting, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm just me. But every time I've been given an opportunity to do public speaking, I've done it because I was that little girl who was afraid and crying and didn't want to do it, or I was that little girl who was looking for me, basically the adult version of me, to see that, I can be a scientist, I can be someone who can be a public speaker, I can represent an organization. And probably one of the proudest moments in my career is when, I'm not sure if you remember, a few years ago, there were the March for Science. It was just all across the country supporting scientists. Science is real. It is not fake news. Speaking out about climate change and how it is a crisis and it needs to be addressed. So I think this was probably about 3 years ago. I got to be a speaker on behalf of the Monterey Bay Aquarium for the Monterey March for Science. And I was terrified. I do not like doing big things, especially, I get a microphone, I speak in front of people. I'm, on YouTube, on the Aquariums channel. I can do public speaking, but public speaking for a cause that I believed in so much in front of a rally of people, I was shaking. I was just absolutely shaking. And I remember I got up there. I had my little speech in front of me. I couldn't memorize it because I was so nervous, but I kept looking up, and I was so proud of myself doing that. And that's one of the proudest moments, because I was thinking, here I am, a woman of color, and I'm speaking out, and I can see children of all different colors out there, and I'm hoping that they see themselves in me. I hope that they can see themselves growing up and being like this. And I remember I even got feedback from one of the girls that was out there, like her mom contacted me and said, thank you so much for speaking on behalf of just women in sciences. And I just cried.
What really is, I think, one of the most valuable takeaways for me, for talking to you, was to hear you say you were nervous, you didn't want to go, you never wanted to do public speaking, but you took all the fear and used it and that energy to get through it. And, that is something I think that people don't realize. That is the impetus for getting out there. If you have that fear, that's okay. That's what you're supposed to have. If you're too confident, maybe you're not going to do so well. But I think when you have that fear and that energy, you're going to be working on perfection. You're going to make it right. And over time you learn, this is what I learned as a public speaker, nobody knows what you're going to say. So you make a mistake, they don't even know. So tell me, have you had any obstacles in your career at all? And if so, how did you overcome them? We talked about your public speaking. That was one.
That was huge. That was a big one.
That was the biggest one.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Biggest obstacle is public speaking. I think other obstacles were probably just ones that I had to overcome in myself, just like thinking, oh, I could never possibly do that, or how could I get to this place? Like, even in the aquarium, just thinking, oh, that role, it's so beyond me. How could I ever be that? It's funny because I think this happens to a lot of people, that you set a goal for yourself, the next role, the manager, the VP, and you're like, I could never get there. Look at this other person. They know what they're doing. They're so good. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody is trying to figure it out as they go, and they're just pulling from their own experience.
Yeah.
And one of the best things for me, I think, was working with teams. Working with teams really helped me see where I was and where I am now. And it was really neat being a mentor for teams and seeing how nervous they are about things, how they're nervous about public speaking or making friends with someone or talking to an adult or talking to children, and just all the struggles they're going through. And it's just so relatable. It takes you back to that place and thinking of, like, how did I overcome that fear, that nervousness, and then realizing, like, oh, now I'm in the role of being the teacher, whereas before I could never see myself being there. So I think it's always really nice. I love being a trainer. I love being a trainer, and I love being a mentor. And that was a great joy in my career. And I think that really helped me overcome a lot of my anxieties about making it to the next step. And I've gotten to a point now in my career where I feel like I can speak to people who are like my manager or a VP or a director or the chief executive. And I don't feel fear anymore. I used to feel fear. I couldn't get on their level. I couldn't be there. And the more I talk to people, I realize we're all just people. Mm-hmm. And some people just have more experience than others, but most people who have more experience are willing to share that.
Yeah.
And you should never be afraid of asking questions, of going to someone else who's been there for 30 years and talking to them. How did you get here? People love to tell their stories. Yeah. People want to help. People want to inspire the next generation. People want to groom, usually people within their institution, and give them opportunities to move up. People want to hear your ideas. So I think just one of the biggest things to overcome was myself and my fear of not being enough. And knowing that I am, mm-hmm. and that I can continue to grow, even though I do feel like I am enough, I can grow beyond me. And it's so empowering. It's so empowering to be able to speak to others and to know that I am enough and I'm doing a good job.
Well, thank God you're there, because how will they continue this institute without people like you who they can depend on to carry, the torch to the next level? Because no one's going to be there forever. They've got to retire. Or find other interests. But if they've got a young woman or man in the wings waiting, they can hand it off to you and be assured that the goals of the organization will continue on. Is there any other career path you've been looking at other than Monterey?
Yeah, I've looked at going back home to Silicon Valley one day. So just marketing in general. For another company, I think that would be really cool.
Using media marketing, that's the
yeah. Any sort of like digital marketing, email marketing. I have social media skills too, so would be comfortable on all of those platforms. Mm-hmm. I think that would be the next step. But for now, this role that I'm in right now was my big career change. Even though I'm still at the same organization, going from education and interpretation on the floor to email marketing and digital strategy that was my big change.
Yeah.
So any other career path would probably be along the same lines of digital strategy.
Now, are there programs that are set up on a digital platform or that are available online?
We have lots of resources on the main website just to learn about it. The web story that I wrote will be on the website. It's a great resource, and just general education's on there too. We have a lot of courses, like free online courses, just to learn about marine science. You can learn about all the programs that we're doing at the aquarium for like research on white sharks or sea otters or just everything about us. And, you can find out all our social media stuff, which is more like fun content, fun storytelling.
So what is the URL for the website?
Yeah, it's MontereyBayAquarium.org.
That was easy. But thank you, Rachael, for giving me this time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Well, I think you're going to inspire a whole lot of people that look like us to go into this field. I mean, I'm sure many people are already interested. It's just that they don't know how to get there.
Yeah, and it's important when you see yourself in the story. It really changes a lot.
It does.
When you finally see yourself, you're like, I can do that. She could do that. I can do that.
Yeah. You can read Rachael's article on the Monterey Bay Aquarium website. Follow the main menu under Animals and then look for the heading Stories. Rachael's article is about sharks and the 2 African-American female shark scientists that study them and the minorities in Shark Science Organization. Thank you, Rachael, for talking to us about your work at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and thank you for listening.